Okay, I'm going to throw something at you that probably sounds, well, completely backwards. The idea is this: science is actually impossible without God. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but stick with me and let's break down why this might be true.
Now, I can already hear what a lot of you are thinking. The story we always hear is that science and God are at war, right? And, that science is winning. The more we learn about the cosmos, the less space there is for God. That's the common thinking anyway.
But you know what? That whole story is just wrong. Not just a little wrong, but fundamentally wrong. Get this, not a single scientific discovery has ever, even once, disproved the existence of God. Not one. And here's the real twist we're diving into today. The very act of doing science, it actually depends on a few core beliefs. These are unprovable assumptions that every single scientist has to make. And, as we're going to see, these beliefs just don't make any sense in a universe without God. So let's jump into the first big assumption. To do any science at all, you first have to believe that you live in a world that's orderly and predictable. You have to assume that the universe isn't chaotic, that it actually plays by a consistent set of rules.
I mean, think about it. A scientist goes into the lab assuming that gravity isn't just going to decide to take tomorrow off. They have to trust that water will boil at the same temperature next week as it does today. They are betting everything on the idea that the laws of nature are stable. But here's the catch. You can't prove that. You can't run an experiment on the future. It's an act of faith.
And this is where things get really sticky for a worldview that says there's no God. If the universe is just one big cosmic accident, why on earth should it be so orderly? Why would it follow any rules at all, let alone consistent ones? Accidents are messy, they're unpredictable, not stable and reliable.
Okay, let's move on to the second unprovable belief that science is built on. You have to assume that your own mind, your brain, is actually capable of understanding reality. You have to trust that you can think logically.
So here's the problem this creates. If your brain is nothing more than the end result of millions of years of random, unguided evolution, just chemicals sloshing around in your skull, why in the world would you trust its conclusions about anything?
This analogy just makes it so clear. Imagine there's a huge explosion at a junkyard, and somehow, out of all that random chaos, a calculator is formed. Now, would you pick up that calculator and use it to do your taxes? No way. So why would you trust the thoughts and conclusions of a human brain if you believe it's the product of a similar, unguided cosmic accident?
And all this brings us to the third and final foundational belief. To even be a scientist, you have to believe that objective truth is a real thing, something that's out there, and that we can actually find it.
Let's just look at how these two worldviews stack up. In a world made by a rational God, truth is woven into the very fabric of reality. 2 + 2 = 4 for everyone, everywhere, for all time. But in a godless, material universe, what even is truth? At best, it's just a particular chemical reaction in your accidental brain. It's not objectively real, it's more like a useful fiction that helped our ancestors survive.
So you see what's happening here? This is the crucial point. To even start an experiment, the atheist scientist has to assume all these things: an orderly universe, a rational mind, an objective truth. But none of those ideas logically come from their own worldview. They actually have to borrow them from a world where God exists just to get their science off the ground.
And man, there's this killer quote from the philosopher Greg Banson that just nails the whole contradiction. What he means is that the atheist is using the very tools of logic, reason, and order, tools that only really make sense if God exists, to argue against God.
To put it another way, it's like they're standing on a solid floor, this foundation of an orderly, rational, truth-filled reality, all while arguing that the floor itself and the foundation holding it up doesn't even exist. They're using the very thing they deny.
So, at the end of the day, we're left with this question. We've seen that science absolutely requires a foundation of faith. Faith in order, in reason, and in truth. But science itself can't prove that foundation. So the real question isn't if science requires faith, it's whose foundation makes the most sense of why science is even possible in the first place.